Asterisk, what did you see in the woods? My son came back different. Asterisk, it's the silence I can't stand. Before, our house was filled with noise, the constant hum of video games, the thud of a kicked soccer ball against the garage door, my son Leo's endless questions about everything from why the sky was blue to whether spiders had nightmares. He was a fountain of chaotic, beautiful noise. Now there's just silence, a heavy, watchful silence that settled over our lives the day my son came back from the woods, or rather the day something that looked like my son came back had happened. On a crisp Saturday in October. We live right on the edge of the Blackwood National Forest, and the woods were practically Leo's backyard. He was 8. Fearless in that way only an 8-year-old can be. He knew the trails near our house better than I did, just to the old creek. "Dad," he'd shouted, his hand already on the back door. "I'll be back before lunch." I was under the kitchen sink, wrestling with a leaky pipe, surrounded by wrenches and curses. I just waved a greasy hand in his direction. "Don't go too far," I called out. That was the last normal thing I ever said to him. The last time I saw my real son. Lunch came and went. Then 2 o'clock. Bye for a cold. Hard knot of dread was tightening in my stomach. It's a feeling unique to parents, a sixth sense that screams when something is fundamentally wrong. I called his name until my throat was raw, the sound swallowed by the indifferent trees. My wife Sarah and I searched until dusk, our frantic calls replaced by the sweep of flashlight beams, cutting uselessly into the growing dark. The next 72 hours were a waking nightmare, a blur of police sirens, organized search parties with fluorescent vests, sympathetic news crews on our lawn, and the pitying faces of neighbors bringing casseroles we couldn't eat. It was a special kind of hell, living in those moments between hope and despair. Every rustle of leaves was him. Every shadow was the worst thing I could possibly imagine. On the third day I was sitting at our kitchen table, staring at a missing poster with Leo's bright, toothy smile on it, feeling like a ghost in my own home. That's when the call came. They'd found him. Asterisk, a park ranger had discovered him walking along an old disused logging road, miles from where he'd gone in. He was fine, that was the word everyone used. A miracle, not a scratch on him. His clothes weren't even that dirty. The doctors at the hospital checked him over and repeated the same words. Physically, he's perfect, they told us, their faces beaming with professional relief. He's probably just in shock from the ordeal. It'll take time for him to process it, but when they let us in to see him, I felt a deep, primal chill that had nothing to do with relief. He was sitting on that sterile hospital bed, staring at a blank white wall, his hands folded neatly in his lap. The boy they found wasn't. In shock, he was empty. When he finally turned to look at me, there was no recognition in his eyes, no relief, no fear, no joy at seeing his father. Just a flat, placid blankness, like looking into the eyes of a doll. He came home with us, but our son DIDN single quotes T. We brought him back to a house filled with welcome home balloons that suddenly felt mocking, and that's when the deep strangeness really began to take root. The boy who used to bounce off the walls now moved with a slow, deliberate, almost unnerving grace. He'd sit in his room for hours, in the dark. The closed door was a barrier we were afraid to cross. If we tried to open the blinds to let in the daylight, he'd flinch from the sunlight as if it physically burned him. Retreating to the darkest corner of the room, he stopped eating his favorite foods. He used to devour my spaghetti. Now he just pushed the noodles around the plate with his fork, his eyes fixed on nothing. And he was always cold. His skin had a clammy, almost damp feel to it, no matter how many blankets we piled on him. One night, Sarah tried to hug him, and she pulled back, her face confused. "He feels different," she whispered to me later, "like he's not all there." She was trying to find a rational explanation, but I could see the seed of my own fear in her eyes. Then came the whispers. I'd pass his closed door late at night and hear it. It wasn't talking, not really. It was a series of wet, clicking sounds, guttural and rhythmic, like insects chittering in a cave. The first time I heard it, my blood ran cold. I thought he was choking. I burst into the room, my heart hammering against my ribs, but he was just sitting on his bed in the dark, staring at me. The sound stopped instantly. He just watched me with those empty eyes, his head tilted slightly, as if I were the one acting. Strangely, his drawings changed. Too, he used to draw colorful superheroes and fantastic spaceships. Now, he only drew the woods, over and over. But his trees were wrong, twisted and skeletal, and between them, there were always figures, tall, unnaturally thin things, with limbs that bent at impossible angles. They were always watching from the deep shadows of the page. And on every single drawing, hidden in a corner or carved into a tree trunk, he'd sketched the same strange, spiral symbol. A vortex, pulling you and Bloco to halves. About a month after he came back, I saw it with my own eyes. I was washing dishes, looking out the kitchen window towards the tree line that marked the edge of our property. Just for a second, I saw a shape detach itself from the trunk of a giant oak tree. It was tall, impossibly thin, motionless. It was one of the figures from his drawings. I felt a paralyzing cold wash over me. It felt like it was looking right at me, right into the house. I blinked, and it was gone, melting back into the shadows between the trees, as if it were never there. I told Sarah, my voice trembling, but she said I was tired, stressed, that my mind was playing tricks on me. She was trying so hard to believe we had our son back, that we could piece our family back together. But I knew what I saw. I knew we were being watched. The breaking point, the moment my denial finally shattered, came last Tuesday. I was cleaning his room, a task I'd been avoiding, and I found one of his drawings stuffed under the bed. It was different from the others. It was a map, a crude, childish map of the woods behind our house, leading from our backyard to a specific spot marked with that same dreadful spiral symbol. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. The silence, the whispers, the coldness of the thing that wore my son's face. I had to know what happened to him out there. I had to face it. After Sarah and the boy were asleep, I took a heavy flashlight and the crumpled drawing and slipped out the back door. The woods greeted me with an oppressive, dead silence. The air was cold and heavy. I followed the crude path from the drawing, my heart pounding with every snapped twig under my feet. It led me deeper than I'd ever been, to a part of the forest that felt ancient and fundamentally wrong. The trees here were different, older, larger, and they seemed to lean in towards the trail. Their branches like grasping fingers. And then I found it. A massive, gnarled tree, so old its bark looked like wrinkled, gray stone. Its presence felt malevolent. Carved deep into its trunk was the spiral symbol from the drawings, pulsing with a darkness that seemed to absorb the beam of my flashlight. My hand was shaking as I pointed the light towards the base of the tree. There, half buried under a layer of damp leaves, was a small, muddy sneaker. Leo's sneaker, the very one he was wearing the day he disappeared. My breath caught in my chest, and next to it was something else. A pile of what looked like shed skin, like a snake's, but thicker, pale white, and vaguely horrifyingly humanoid in shape. A wave of bile and terror rose in my throat as the truth crashed down on me with the force of a physical blow. The thing in my house wasn't my son. It was a replacement, a copy, a changeling from some forgotten, terrible folklore. My Leo, my real Leo, was gone, taken, and in that moment of horrifying realization, I heard a sound from the canopy high above me, that same wet, clicking sound from his bedroom. I looked up, my flashlight beam cutting a terrified, shaking path into the darkness, and I saw them. Two pale, glowing eyes blinked slowly. A long, thin limb, impossibly jointed, unfurled from a branch, reaching down towards me. I didn't scream. The sound was trapped in my throat. I just ran. I ran without looking back, branches whipping at my face, my lungs burning. I burst out of the tree line and into the relative safety of my own backyard. I fumbled with the lock, crashed through the door, and slammed it shut, my whole body shaking uncontrollably, and he was standing there, in the dark kitchen. The boy who looked like my son, he was just standing in the middle of the room, perfectly still, as if he had been waiting for me. The moonlight from the window caught his face, and for the very first time since he'd returned, he smiled at me. It was not the smile of an 80-year-old boy. It was too wide, too thin, and utterly devoid of warmth or humanity. It was a predator's smile. His eyes, fixed on mine, seemed to hold an ancient, alien intelligence. Then, he spoke, not in a whisper, but in a clear, perfect imitation of my son's voice, though it was laced with that awful, clicking undertone. "You saw," he said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. "Now you know. I haven't told anyone. I can't. How could I explain this? Who would believe that I'm living with a creature that has stolen my son's life? That my real son was taken by the silent things that live in the woods? So now, I played the part. I'm the loving father, helping his poor traumatized son recover every day. I look into the face of my child and I see the monster wearing it as a mask. And every single night, I see him standing by his window, not looking at the stars, but looking out at the woods, at the dark tree line, as if he's waiting for his real family to come and collect him. The silence in this house isn't empty anymore. It